We come from many different paths to gather here, for wide is God's welcome, and you are welcome here. If you believe in God some of the time, or none of the time, or all of the time, you are welcome here. If you are happy or sad, rich or poor, powerful or weak, if you are young, old, or just young at heart, you are welcome here. If you are married, single, partnered, divorced, widowed, if you are gay or straight or a little of each, if you are male or female or a little of each, if you don't see or hear or move so well, you are welcome here. Your presence here is a gift that challenges us to open our doors as wide as God's welcome. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcomed here by the God who made you and loves you just the way you are, and loves you enough to challenge you to keep growing toward that person God made you to be. Come, let us seek and worship this our God.
Is wildness only something we protect ourselves from? Like April snow showers. Or is wildness disordered, unpredictable, chaotic, something we impose order on using our human ingenuity.
As capable as humans are of making beautiful things, everything that we create comes from our imagination and expresses a sort of order. But wild things express a beauty beyond imagination. In the television show Joan of Arcadia, Joan was visited by people who claimed to be God in the flesh, and understandably it was hard for her to believe that. When she was finally ready to test it, when she really thought that this person might indeed be God, she put God to the test and said, okay, how about a miracle? And this person simply did this. And she said, but that's a tree. And God said, yeah, you make one.
Wildness is a gift, but only if we see the Creator's hand in all of creation. If we see God only as some watchmaker who wound up the clock and then walked away, we can only see echoes of original blessings and are more likely to focus on what we consider curses. If we see God only in the supernatural, but not in the everyday and rather supernatural processes, then we run the risk of believing in a God of the gaps. That God is seen only in disastrous acts of God or vengeful curses. And unexplained blessings become the sole definition of miracle, missing the miracle that Walt Whitman saw in The Blade of Grass. He wrote, "Why? Who makes much of a miracle? As to me, I know nothing else but miracles. To me, every hour of the light and dark is a miracle. Every cubic inch of space is a miracle. Every square yard of the surface of the earth is spread with the same. Every foot of the interior swarms with the same. Every spear of grass, the frames, limbs, organs of men and women, and all that concerns them. All these to me are unspeakably perfect miracles." Scott Sanders put it this way: like the trickster figures who show up in tales the world over, wildness has many guises, but chief among them are creator and destroyer. Coyote and spider and hare bring gifts one day and steal them away the next. Knowing this, we have the choice of judging wildness, the very condition of our being, primarily by what it snatches away or by what it gives. We will not find hope apart from wildness. We must not separate ourselves, thinking that we can be apart from the wild. No, we must acknowledge wildness as our source, as the creatures we are, acknowledging the Creator who is. We are not apart from wildness. We are a part of wildness. Wildness flows through us and sustains us. Wildness is a miracle. Wildness is divine. Wildness is love. Wildness is hope.
I hope hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' love and righteousness. I dare not trust this earthly frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand.
In the bulb there is a flower, in the seed an apple tree. In cocoons a hidden promise, butterflies will soon be free. In the cold and snow of winter there's a spring that waits to be unrevealed until its season, something God alone can see. There's a song in every silence, seeking word and melody. There's a dawn in every darkness, bringing hope to you and me. From the past will come the future, but it holds a mystery, unrevealed until a season, something God alone can see. In our end is our beginning, in our time, infinity. In our doubt there is believing, in our life, eternity. In our death, a resurrection, at the last, a victory. Unrevealed until a season, something God alone can see.
Good morning. It's Sunday again, and here we are together. I hope you've had a great week. Today for our children's moment, I asked the children a question again because they have been giving us such lovely answers. My question was, what in nature connects you to hope? And it was actually Pastor Ian's question of the week as well. But I wanted to hear what the kids and the youth and some of their parents had to say about it. I know for me, it's anything that has to do with water. I love just sitting by it, just relaxing, being there, watching it run, watching the waves crash. It just brings me a hope of the constant, of the calm. And so as I was reading these questions or the answers of the kids as they were giving it to me, I told them I felt like we were at church together because their answers were just so meaningful, and it was just so nice to read. And we all know that kids and nature, it's just so free. It's so freeing, and it gives us a lot of hope to watch kids out in nature, to watch them learn and run and get to do and make believe and do anything that they want. So I hope when you hear their answers of where they find hope and what connects them to hope in nature, I hope you think about what brings you hope as well, and enjoy.
Hope is not always simple to find. We have to hunt for it. Last week we introduced the idea of a medicine pouch, something to hold talismans that help you on your quest, as native peoples often did when they went on a vision quest seeking some enlightenment. Here is a medicine pouch that holds meaning for us here in our house. Your items in your collection might be different. Perhaps you haven't started it, perhaps you have. Perhaps you will use other means, perhaps words or photographs. Maybe it won't be something you carry with you, perhaps because you are at home, you'll gather things into one place, as we have here on the table that we're using as the center of our worship. Here is this week's talisman, reminding us of wildness. All the elements of it are foraged, they're gathered, they're wild. And so this token will remain on the table throughout the series and remind us that we are hunting for hope in wildness.
This is Patrick Swanson.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you with us. And Patrick, you are actually a professor at Creighton University teaching what?
Immunology.
Immunology.
Yes.
Great. But you have a vocation in immunology, but you have an avocation as well.
I do. I've been enjoying the process of restoring a prairie that's up in Iowa, about an hour or so north of Omaha.
So you say you're restoring this prairie. Are you like pulling up parking lot? Is that how you're restoring it, or what's there now?
Well, what has happened over the years, historically that was kept open by two major forces. One was fire, and the other was grazing, short, intense grazing by bison probably, most likely, and some elk. And over the course of time, what's happened is that we've suppressed those, removed fire from the ecosystem, removed the bison, and eastern red cedar, which is a native tree, has gradually encroached on those prairies. And by the time that I purchased it, it was almost fully enclosed with cedars. And what happens is that they just grow so dense that they basically shade out all of the grass, and eventually it looks something like this, where there is mostly bare soil, and the diversity and beauty of those grasses gets suppressed, and you lose it. And if it goes on long enough, it's lost forever.
Huh. Now, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, where you think your tree, good, grass, you got to mow. I mean, what's so special? Why not say, hey, these cedars are pretty neat too? But
they do have their place, but too dense like this, it becomes a monoculture, and it's almost like a cornfield, except it's a tree field, and it's not nearly as diverse and beautiful and wonderful as it would be otherwise. You can kind of see where the grasses are in the dense cedar thickets behind, almost impenetrable. And you see a lot of bare soil there still, but some grass. And 4 years later, we've managed to clear that hillside, and the grasses have really recovered on their own. I haven't planted anything. I haven't done anything other than just remove the cedars. And you begin to see this flush of grassland and various flowers. And we have the picture shown here, taken in June, shows just the first wave of flowers. The flowers begin blooming at the very end of March and continue in succession, different flowers in their own time and space, flowering all the way to the end of the growing season. And this is one picture of that.
Yeah, that was a really surprise to me when I moved to the Midwest. Before I was thinking, prairie is just a bunch of overgrown grass, but it really is. You get close to it, and within just a 3-foot square, you could see there's so many varieties of, there's grasses, there's flowers, and I know you took me up to the place that we just saw, and you were pointing out about 60 different varieties of grasses and flowers and so forth that were either present there or going to be present in another part of the season. It's amazing the diversity, and to think that you didn't plant all that stuff, you didn't scatter any seeds, you just kind of simply made space.
Yes, I just removed the cedars and gave it light, and nature took care of itself, and it was all there. It just was waiting for the light to rejuvenate.
So in your book, you identify wildness as a source of hope. Now that seems a bit unexpected for many of us, that wildness would be a source. What can you tell us about wildness?
Well, wildness is a deep mystery. Wildness is the ongoingness of the universe. We take for granted that our bodies are going to keep functioning. Right now, as we sit here, there are millions and millions, literally, of processes going on in us, digestive and metabolic and circulatory and breathing and so forth going on in each of us that we have no conscious control over. In fact, it's good that we don't have conscious control over, because we think, oh, I forgot to breathe. Oh, I forgot, I forgot to digest breakfast. Wildness is this ongoingness of the organism, the individual organism, but also of the totality. All around us, this house that we're sitting in is surrounded by gardens, some of which we've planted, my wife and I have planted, much of which spontaneously comes out of the soil. That power of growth, that power of renewal, the seed that is produced and falls on the ground and next year brings out new plants. That power of growth and renewal is what wildness is about. And the other productions of wildness, the non-human productions of wildness, of course, vastly outnumber we ourselves. But we are just as fully invested in, part of, governed by, shaped by wildness as any other organism. And there's one thing that is profoundly moving to me about the other animals, and that is that they don't hold grudges. Mm-hmm. Humans do. Many of our wars are fought because of resentments for some past wrong or some past act of violence. Mm-hmm. But consider the whales that humans have been hunting for hundreds, thousands of years. Or consider the beavers that have been trapped almost to extinction and now they're coming back. Consider almost any species of animal that humans have exploited. They don't bear grudges. If they were human, they would. They'd probably be at war with us. Right. That's very touching to me about other species, that they simply want to go on, yearn to go on with their lives and to reproduce their own kind and to live and dwell in the world. It's only humans that seem to want to make up for past grievances. So I think that vengefulness is not intrinsic to wildness, because we don't see it anywhere else in the organismic world except in ourselves. Another dimension of wildness is the shapeliness of things. Nature isn't random. The shapes in nature are not random, although there may be random processes underlying it. That's what the physicists tell us about quantum, the quantum level, that there's randomness there. But the net result of it is not random. An oak tree doesn't, when you plant an acorn, you don't get a maple tree, you get an oak tree. And this oak tree will not be identical to that oak tree any more than you and I are identical, but we're both recognizably human, and two oak trees are recognizably oak trees. There's a shapeliness to wildness that passes on through time. At the cosmic, inorganic level, galaxies are shapely. They're not just random distributions of matter. They form into different shapes, like the spiral galaxy that we're part of here in the Milky Way. And that shapeliness is also intrinsic to wildness. And I'll just make one more point about wildness. I think that the human imagination, especially as it's expressed in the arts, all the arts, is akin to the creativeness that we see in the natural world. That what artists make at their best, not all art, but at their best, what artists make is another manifestation of that creative energy that we call wildness, that we see in the natural world. When it appears in the human world, it appears most commonly, I think, in the gesture where we're trying to create something beautiful, something shapely ourselves. It may be music, it may be a painting, it may be a story, it may be a scientific formula. But the impulse to do that and the shaping energy that we invest in the making of those things is akin to, I believe, the energy of wildness.
sudden pause in our lives to demand. Creation breathes again as it was created. Clearing water shows our intertwining selves related. Lean into newfound silence. God is whispering. God elated. There is room. There is room. All of creation lies waiting in quiet measure. Wings soar above, less titanium, more feather. Reflect over water, wings break surface tension. Nature stepping closer, a moment of suspension. Lean into newfound silence. God is whispering. Pay attention. There is room. There is room. There is room. There is room. Hills glimpse vistas once more. A blue sea to the west. Wide-eyed, wild emerges from where it was repressed. From where it was repressed. There is room. There is room. There is room. There is room. This is our pause, granting space amid motion. Now we are called to a grand, bold, new notion. If earth heals so quickly, can we fix what's broken? Lean into the healing, live into the new ocean. There is room. 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 There is room.
This morning's scripture is from Isaiah chapter 40, verses 18 to 31. To whom then will you liken God, or what likeness compare with him? An idol? A workman casts it, and a goldsmith overlays it with gold, and casts for it silver chains. As a gift one chooses mulberry wood, wood that will not rot, then seeks out a skilled artisan to set up an image that will not topple. Have you not known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told to you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to live in, who brings princes to naught and makes the rulers of the earth as nothing. Scarcely are they planted, scarcely sown, scarcely has their stem taken root in the earth, when he blows upon them, and they wither, and the tempest carries them off like stubble. To whom then will you compare me? Or who is my equal? Says the Holy One. Lift up your eyes on high and see. Who created these? He who brings out their host and numbers them, calling them all by name, because he is great in strength, mighty in power, not one is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God? Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Even youths will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. May God add a blessing to this reading.
The bald eagle was placed on the federal endangered species list in 1967. By 1979, there were only 4 nesting pairs in all of the state of Ohio. But by protecting them, in 2007, they were able to be removed from the federal endangered species list, and in 2012, from the endangered species list in Ohio as well. Today, there are 707 nests in Ohio. All but 3 counties in the state have an eagle nesting in them. 7 nests are right here in Lake County. Earth Day just celebrated its 50th birthday. And one of the events that was pivotal in creating Earth Day happened right here in Ohio, right in Cleveland. Remember that the river used to burn? And one of the last big burns of the Cuyahoga River happened just over 50 years ago and was one of the reasons why Earth Day was created. Because of Earth Day, the Environmental Protection Agency was formed. And over the course of 50 years, we have stopped acting so much like the Creator and understanding that we are a creature. And we have backed off and given space. And nature has found a way because we made room. We need to have a better perspective on nature, on the Creator and the creation. Do we treat creation as if it exists to serve us? Think about our animals. The relationship that we have to creation through animals is often primarily through pets who have been bred and created to be our companions and our servants. They're not as wild as they once were. We've taken the wildness out of them. I prefer my creatures wild. I like to go out into nature, not even feeding birds in my yard so much, because that feels almost like taming them to a certain extent. And I have found that the real way to experience the diversity that nature provides is to be in nature, to find my place, to be a creature in creation, not trying to make creation fit my will and do the things that I would like. It's a matter of perspective. 30 years ago, I was living in Salem, Massachusetts, and this one stand of woods was threatened by a golf course expansion. It was one of the last bits of open space in the entire city. And so we formed a group, the Friends of Salem Woods, to try to preserve those woods. Most of us had a connection that we felt passionate about. I cared about the bird life of the woods. Others cared about the ability to hike and run on the trails. Others cared about the plants. There was one founding member named Jim who had never even been to the woods and didn't care to go to the woods, wasn't interested in improving the trails and doing that kind of work. He just wanted to preserve the trees that were sucking up the carbon dioxide and spitting out the oxygen because that mattered. That is a healthy understanding of wildness and the hope that it brings. Letting nature be nature. Letting creation be creation. I got this photograph this week from Paula, who had stopped at the church to bring some donations to the food pantry, and she sent this to me and said, "Look at that beauty." And I have to agree, that red-shouldered hawk is a beautiful bird. Sitting on those peace poles, it's a great picture. But I also have enough knowledge to know not only that that's a red-shouldered hawk, but that red-shouldered hawks, given a chance, will eat other birds. Possibly even the bluebirds that are nesting right there. And its presence sitting on that pole where the bluebirds often sit is good evidence that he was interested in making a meal of them. I can assure you that he has not, and that nest has an egg in it today. But we have this perspective on nature. We put the story on it. Predators are bad. Well, are they? We're predators. Is there good and bad in this? Or is that a layer that we put on creation? Taking wildness as something to avoid, something that's harmful, something perhaps that we don't understand. We can look at that hawk and be concerned for what it does in nature, but it's just being a hawk. Or we can look at it and marvel at the beauty and the skill that it possesses. We need to take a look at what the creation tells us about the Creator. How much of what we understand about God do we see around us in the creation, and how much do we impose upon God? Do we see God, as Isaiah said in this passage, sitting above the earth, perhaps in judgment, perhaps distant, not present with us? Do we see God as an idol that could be created? Of course not. We cannot fashion a God for ourselves. God is the God of creation. God is the God of wildness. And wildness is a gift. Because God is not just distant, but is close in the ongoingness of creation. All those things that happen automatically in our bodies are a gift of God. God cares for us and sustains us by making sure that our heart keeps beating, that we don't have to stop and think about it and take care of that. We might hold our breath even, but when we do, that doesn't stop the transfer of the oxygen into our blood. The systems exist because God has created them to be loving. If we see God not only as distant as the farthest star, but as near as each breath that we take, then we can proclaim like Isaiah proclaimed, that if we wait, if we're still, and wait on God to reveal God's self to us in all the beauty of creation, then we will rise up with wings like eagles. Then we will run and not be weary. And then we will walk and not faint. If we make room, nature will find a way. Creation will speak to and even through us. In the Chronicles of Narnia, the hero, the savior, the Christ figure is Aslan. And when the children of earth go into Narnia and are taken in and shown hospitality by the beaver family, they're already marveling that the creatures can speak and that these marvelous creatures exist at all. And they're taking in the fact that the savior who's coming, Aslan, is a lion. And they're shocked. And they say to the beavers, "A lion? But is he safe?" And the beavers reply with a chuckle, "Of course he's not safe, but he's good." Friends, that is the God of creation. Our God is not safe. Creation is not safe. There are consequences to our behavior. If we pollute rivers, they might burn, and they will not sustain us. But God, like creation, is not in the vengeance business. God is in the sustaining business, the loving business. God is not safe, but we can find hope, and we do find hope in wildness if we believe that this wild God of ours is good and loves you beyond your wildest imagination. Amen.
Praise to the living God, the God of love and light, whose word brought forth the myriad suns and set the worlds in flight, whose infinite design, which we but dimly see, pervades all nature, making all a cosmic unity. Praise to the living God, from whom all things derive, whose spirit formed upon this sphere and first faint seeds of life, who caused them to evolve, unwitting toward God's goal, till humankind stood on the earth as living, thinking souls. Praise to the living God, who knows our joy and pain, who shares with us our common life, the sacred and profane. God dwells where we toil, in home and mart and mill, and deep within the human heart, God leads us forward still. Praise to the living God, around, within, above, beyond the grasp of human mind, but whom we know is love. In these tumultuous days, so full of hope and strife, may we
If you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, thank you for being with us. We're going to have a piece of music and some announcements and then move into prayers, communion, and a virtual coffee hour. You're free to join us if you are watching this in real time, and you can meet up in our Zoom room. The meeting ID is the church phone number, 440-256-3329. We'd love to have you. And if this is not in real time or you're not going to join us, we still hope that you will like and share the video, whether on Facebook or YouTube, and you'll take some time to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can be a part of us in other times and other ways. This coming week, we are going to start looking at the next topic. We're going to look at where we find hope in our bodies. And so the question of the week for you to engage in with us is this: what does hope look like? What does hope taste like? What does hope smell like? What does hope feel like? What does hope sound like? How do your senses help you find hope? So as you reflect on that question during the week, please share your responses on Facebook if you would, and we will include you in our worship next week, and we hope to see you then. Now let us hear our music and share our announcements.